Well, here we are, ninth episode of The Next Step, and we've got not a situation. A situation is overstating it, but certainly an interesting complication, and we wanted to make the most of that. So today it's a two-part episode. It's all together, but this was shot over multiple days because, well, you'll see. So we bring in Michael Brown of the newly formed company Door 3 Talent. I've known Michael for a while. We've been, LinkedIn buddies for a very long time, and he posted a pretty interesting post about how he was leveraging the LinkedIn data he pulled down to identify leads. And it was really interesting. And I played with it and I kind of went, it's not quite working the way I think it should. And so I said, you know what? Let's just have Michael come in and show us his process and maybe they'll work some wrinkles out. What happened was I am not the best use case for this. I am not the best use case. I'm not a recruiter. I'm not an executive recruiter. I don't have the kind of notes and details that he does that really is that predicates the value of this kind of process. That said, you might be exactly the kind of audience who needs that stuff, in which case this is going to be great. The first half especially is going to be fantastic. For the rest of you, hold tight because this opened up a door. Because now that I pulled out all my LinkedIn data, my own personal LinkedIn data, I realized there was other stuff I could do. So part one of this episode is with Michael talking about his process, and part two is what happens after I collect the data needed to actually run this process, and then what I did next. So without further ado, here we go. I'm bringing in Michael. All right, so I'm going to admit something right off the bat. About 2 years ago, look, like you're listening to a lot of Apple playlists from Spotify or whatever, and you love that kind of year-end kind of, oh, this is what you did this year. And I had gotten like 7 or 8 year-end lists, and I wondered, Spotify's got like 10 years of my listening history. It would be really interesting to pull all the data down and sort it. And I pulled all the data down. It took like 2 days for Spotify to do it. And I opened the files and I went, oh, this is code. I have no clue what to do here. And I had to hire a guy from Upwork, $50 to kind of just say, go through the data and tell me all the songs I listened to more than 4 times and then sort in number of listens. And it took him, like, I'm sure it took that guy 20 minutes to do this thing. And it was the easiest $50 he ever made. But it's like, that's the stuff where you realize there's so much data about you out in the world. And we think about ChatGPT as, oh, it's going to write my blog copy for you. Don't do that. It's a bad idea. It's a horrible idea. Really, it's about it can be your $50 Upwork coder guy who can look at data that you go, I don't quite get this, and make sense of it. And if you can figure out where your data is, you can do some amazing things. And that is why we have with me Michael Brown of the newly created Door 3 Talent. Thank you. I was almost going to say media, but like that doesn't seem right. So Door 3 Talent. Check out LinkedIn. Michael Brown. He's been around. He's a known quantity, as they say. He knows his stuff, and I'm super excited to have him on because last week he posted a LinkedIn post that I'm sure by now you've seen, given the sheer number of likes and comments on that post, where he talks about how he used his own LinkedIn data to do some really cool stuff. So today, he's going to give us a walkthrough on my data. So God only knows what's going to come of this. But Michael, thanks so much for being here on The Next Step.
James, thank you so much for having me. This is fun to talk about.
Good. I'm glad you agree. All right. So set us up. Like, give us the thought process that got you to this idea, and then we'll do a walkthrough on how you can help me do it, so that other people can start to do it.
Yeah. Well, I've been thinking a lot about, really where it all started from is I've been thinking a lot about the various tools that are out there. Lots of shiny objects. Many of them, and they all do lots of different things, but they all require you to pay some money. And so I've been thinking about, how do I leverage, what's free to me or what I'm already paying for, ChatGPT, $19.99 a month, great $20 spent. And how could I use it to more to my advantage? And I think a lot of people use ChatGPT and drop things into it and ask it to analyze it. But, I think what you get back from that are these like generic summaries and lots of noise. And you're not quite sure if it's like exactly what you really wanted. And I wanted more from that. So I just started to play around with it. And I think, got to a place where I built a prompt almost kind of like a product in a way. And I think with LinkedIn, there's so much data. Like the LinkedIn data pack that you can download, I would suggest everybody do it. You can do the simple version, takes 24 hours. The extendo version is like 48 to 72 hours turnaround. But once you've got that, you've got all of your data, anything that you've shared, any emails sent, any things you've clicked on, connections. There's just so much there that felt right for the picking.
Yeah. So, and I agree. I think there's, we're always online. We're always doing stuff online, and having just pulled all my LinkedIn data down, it's a lot of stuff. It is not fooling. It's a whole lot of stuff. So I'm actually on your LinkedIn post, and I'm trying to pull down the prompts so we can do this a little faster. But and now I'm blanking. This might be an editable part.
Well, while you do that, I think the
Yeah.
other thing for just listeners, like if you're going to build something like this, before we kind of get into what it is, there's like endless use cases,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like, and I think spend some time and use ChatGPT like a coach, in terms of like what are the use cases, right? Because it's not just about the data anymore. It's about like what are the high performing signals that we find in that data,
Yeah.
and we want to leverage like really like high outcomes if we can, right? And so like, are there warm leads in the DMs, right? That could be an interesting one. Are there any themes that show up in your top performing posts,
Hmm.
in terms of voice or tone or structure? Are
Yeah.
there any gaps, right, in terms of like people that you don't have in your network or your community that you want to bring into your community? And then I also think about like who did I engage with the most, and that's where this post came from.
Yeah. And once you download your data files and you realize here's all of your comments. And for me, it's a lot of it's 1.3 megs of comments. It is I'm trying to think, what are the other big files that it comes back? It comes back with all the content I've posted. It comes back with all the hashtag follows. I mean, that's just bytes. But I mean, literally, it's giving you every single breakdown of everything you've ever done on LinkedIn all in one spot. So let's figure out, or let's go through one trick on how we can leverage some of this data using ChatGPT. So my screen is at your disposal. Tell me what you want me to do.
All right. So first things first is I would upload uh, your LinkedIn data into ChatGPT.
Okay.
So
Is there a particular file or files you'd like me to do that?
yeah, so if you go into the download pack, um, it's connections.csv.
Okay. And for me, it is 1.3 megs.
That's right.
All right. I've uploaded it.
So you'll upload that.
There you go.
Great. So now it has your data. So now that it's got your data, you can drop that prompt into ChatGPT.
Okay. Do I want okay. Now, this is helpful for a lot of people. I've said this a couple times, but it bears repeating. We've been trained by Google that queries or questions or searches are short. Like literally, Google doesn't see anything beyond the 20th word, I think. Prompts are a completely different beast. And in fact, the more context you give a prompt, the better your solution is going to be. So you've got a document here, and I will link to it in the show notes and the description and all that other good stuff. It is long. Do I want to do the whole thing, or do I want to do part of the thing?
You are going to want to pull in that entire prompt. And that prompt,
Right.
it's really just, it looks scary, by the way.
Oh yeah,
It's
it's a
written in a
beast.
format called YAML. It is a prompting format that can be utilized across platforms.
Yeah.
So it's more of like it's kind of like back when people were writing UML. This is a YAML.
Yeah.
So the prompt is structured in a way that it can be utilized in both ChatGPT or Gemini, probably even Perplexity as well,
Or Claude. Yeah.
And there are going to be a few things that you're going to want to do, because what I did was I had to generalize this, because I was based on me initially. So I needed to go back and generalize it. So you're going to want to go in and you're going to just want to drop in a couple of things there.
Okay.
You're going to want to put in just a little bit of information about yourself, and I believe your target audience as well.
Okay. Is that here?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll fill it in. It is. I want to just point out, I love this whole, you're an expert in strategic marketing and network analysis. You're telling it how to approach the problem. And rather than kind of being worried that, oh, am I giving it too much information? The more context, the better. And it really
Yeah.
does help understand, okay, this is how you want me to approach this. So I'll just call myself a founder, even though
Yeah.
that makes me
And
feel weird.
while, like, I think the other piece of that is, I asked, essentially it was kind of building the AI to essentially kind of simulate like things a human would do. Like highlight people I've messaged multiple times with no reply, right? Like that's pretty powerful. Identify my top 5 most engaged posts among VPs of marketing, right? Like there could be some things that like are very, very specific, that you could do. And then, and that the goal, obviously, turning the raw data into like a human level insight, that where AI does, all the heavy lift for us.
Okay.
Um, and then,
Oh,
and then,
I've done
I've
this.
also,
Hold,
once you
I
get
think, I think I've done this wrong. I think you were, I filled out the wrong spot. So I'm going to change this because I think this is about the data you're giving it.
oh, pardon, I'm sorry, I can't see it. I was,
That's all right. No worries. Okay, we're going back to that. Okay, so you have context. Hey, my current role is X. My primary goal is Y. Okay, so I'll fill that in. Um, Let me ask you another dumb question. Given the prompt is so big, did you write it or did you ask a tool to build the prompt for you?
so I started to write the prompt myself, and then I used ChatGPT as a coach. So similarly to how the beginning of this prompt starts, I have a prompting coach that I also built,
Nice.
that helped me ensure that I was thinking about all the angles and also how to structure it in a way that was going to be best consumed by the AI.
Yeah.
So
And I think,
I asked it questions, like, based on the outcomes of my posts, uh, do I have this structured in the most optimal way? And it would, it comes back with an interesting checklist of yes, you've done these things correctly, and no, these are the things I would update. And this is also where, I got introduced to YAML as well.
hmm, gotcha. And I think I'll do a future episode where we talk about building an actual coach. I think we've touched on it before, but I think now that we're starting to share screens and kind of seeing what prompts look like, I think it would be better to actually build one. Myself, I have one for SEO to kind of run on my site and any other sites that I kind of want some analysis on. I have a coach for sales to help me kind of remind me to do sales because let's be fair, no one loves doing sales. I have a couple of others. I have a writing coach designed just for LinkedIn writing, and I tested it to see if it kind of helped me, and it did, and then it didn't take it as far as I thought. So it's really interesting to try that stuff. So I've got all the information I need here. Is there anything I need to do beyond put my context in here?
I believe there's a couple of prompts. If you scroll down, there's a couple of places where you'll need to kind of input, um, the personas that you're after,
I see.
um, so that way it knows, based on kind of your target audience, um, what kind of users it's running into essentially.
So the way the prompt looks, it says it's identify the top 3 to 5 most strategically important persona types in my network. It sounds like I'm asking ChatGPT to do that, not
Perfect.
me
Perfect.
telling it.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just double checking. I want to make sure engagement strategy per persona type, top 10 warm leads for each person, based on the input list, highlight certain things, and then content strategy. I'm going to kill the content strategy just to kind of simplify things.
That's fine.
Yeah, let's just, we're giving it a lot of steps here.
That's
Whoops.
that's one of the goals that I try to build towards in my prompting as well, is that I don't want it to just run one step. I want it to be a multi-step prompt so that
Yeah.
it's doing a lot of work all at once.
Yeah. And that's because I do, I have a couple tools where I set it and I can literally go make a coffee and come back and just watch it kind of grind. It's like, hey, it's like sending the intern off to do the work.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. All right. So I've got that cleaned up. I'm going to hit the button. Is that cool?
Let's do it.
Now, the nice thing about ChatGPT is if it has questions, it will ask questions. So if this is done horribly wrong, it's not like it's going to just, die. It's really good at kind of looking at stuff and kind of saying, hey, these are some challenges. And you want to give feedback. You want to make sure that as it's returning stuff, oh boy, it's okay. So it's already complained that I've got formatting issues in that file with commas and quotation marks, which it's going to try and fix. Still has structural issues due to line breaks. It's going to fix that. Okay, good. He found it. Here's the file name. Great. Options to move forward. Upload a version of this file that includes your custom annotations, my priority, my context, and my notes, which I don't know that I have.
So there's one additional step is that
Yeah.
once you've completed this step, you're going to want to upload one additional thing, and it's the and this may be actually, James, where we might want to pull in
Yeah.
other data, or maybe we'll just have to walk through it
Mhm.
anecdotally. But what you'll do is you'll basically upload a spreadsheet that has all of the information, or excuse me, has information about um, people in your network that you connect with the most. But
Mhm.
it starts to give it some direction, as it's asking you for right there,
Okay.
on who, how to kind of simulate, and also what are the personas that you want it to essentially go after.
So I have to tell it some of the network hubs, or yeah, identify those hubs so it can kind of work that way.
Yeah, and
Okay.
maybe for the sake of this exercise, why don't we just tell it
Yeah.
what to do really quick versus
Yeah.
build a spreadsheet.
So it's offering me an example in a format, and I'm just going to copy that and you say, let's use that example. And by the way, hey Jessica, how you doing? You didn't know you're going to be a podcast. All right, so let's let it run, see what happens. It's thinking, it's updating memory. Great. I can provide more than that. It's going to provide more than that. Oh boy, it's going to ask for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, this one it takes about 30 minutes. I felt, in terms of like the prep work, to actually get this prompt in a place where you could actually get your outcomes. You really,
Okay.
like, you'll need to have like a little bit more data on your people in your network. The people that you interact with the most.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to kind of pause the recording at some point. I'm going to go back and do this and finish up the podcast on my own. So this is something I will finish up on my own, so we don't have to hang out and force me to do my LinkedIning in front of everybody, which, is really rude. I'm going to present the results of what I found. Let's talk about what other things, now that you have access to all this data, so what are some other good ideas on how a recruiter or a talent acquisition leader or an employer brander could leverage this data to do something that maybe either be creative or unusual, or something that they'd probably have to buy a really expensive tool to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that it seems like people keep commenting on the post as well, that, with other use cases. But it's anything from targeting for cold outreach. And if you're a sales professional, there could be some really great use cases into how to create cold and warm leads from this. Same on the recruiting front. I think you could reverse this a bit. I see this being a great, like, executive search tool.
Mm,
If you're trying to go out and kind of really build a targeted list, or you're trying to do some market mapping,
yeah.
this could be a really, really helpful tool. Same with, if you're thinking about like who you want to market yourself to.
Mm,
This could be a great way to determine, like, what's the makeup of your follower base, and essentially, do you have the right followers uh,
mm,
to be able to support whatever business or objective that you're trying to create.
yeah.
So I think it ends up being you know a million. There's like endless possibilities, right, with this. But I do think there's a ton of companies, though, that are starting to spin themselves up, utilizing this same data. There's quite a few that introduced themselves in the comments in the post. Um, but again, all of those you've got to pay for, and this is
Mhm.
good old free.
Yeah,
You
you're
know?
nearly free. Yeah, and I think this really kind of makes the case for recruiters, the strange recruiters who say, "Why would I build my LinkedIn connections for my company?" It's like, you take them with you, and that network that you build and that you nurture, if you're doing it right, this is how it pays off. You can really start to tap and leverage that network, and tap and leverage the data around that network. This is my opportunity to kind of bang the drum that says, this is why just spamming LinkedIn with we're hiring, join us posts may seem like doing the right thing, but it's not going to serve you. One, the kind of candidates you want don't care. Two, the kind of candidates who will see it, respond to it, are already responding to it on job boards. So what was the purpose of that? And three, you're just teaching your audience that that's all you do, and there's no person, there's no individual, there's no interesting thing behind that. That's what generates and grows networks that you can leverage down the long stretch.
Totally, totally agree. And I think the real magic isn't necessarily like just the data or the prompt. I think it's like giving everybody that lens to see like their influence differently, their network differently, how their voice actually reaches people. I think AI really just kind of helps surface that faster, because you could
Yeah,
go out and do that. We've all, like, if you and I have been spending years on LinkedIn and analyzing what we've done over time, and so you can get there, but
yeah,
that's the long approach, and this is
it's a very long approach.
very fast, very very fast approach. Yeah.
Yeah,
The other thing that I think is really really interesting is like with the LinkedIn data pack, there's other bits in there that you can utilize. You'd mentioned a talent brand bot or a talent brand coach. You
hmm,
can you can build that from this data as well, right?
yeah,
If you take the file shares.csv is every LinkedIn post you've ever written. And if you do the inmails.csv, obviously that's all of your inmails you've ever written.
yeah.
So you can ask ChatGPT to analyze for tone, for structure, for content, like popular content you post about. There's so much goodness in that data that where you could start to either pinpoint or analyze or really make change if you need to.
Yeah, like I can see taking that shares file, dumping it in, and say, okay, this is me. Give me 5 suggestions on how I can make my writing sound more like Seth Godin, or sound a little bit more like someone you find really engaging and really interesting. How do you make those minor tweaks to just take what you're normally writing to the next level and kind of elevate yourself? It doesn't have to be a radical reinvention. It doesn't have to be make me a clone of someone. It can simply say, hey, look, if you're looking at it from a different person's viewpoint, how would you make some small changes to elevate my work? And that doesn't take much time at all, especially if you've got the raw material here, especially if you're posting things on LinkedIn on a semi-regular basis, that it can look at and say, okay, this is your tone, this is what you're doing, and these are the things I would recommend to make you sound more like this other person who is very engaged. It has a big following.
Totally, totally. And then the more you take that data and the more you structure that data within the tool, uh, the the more detail you give the prompt, and even to the extent of the outcomes that you want, and structure that you want to see it come within, and essentially the outcomes, the better off you end up being, and the more uh, strong likelihood you get the results that you're going to want.
Yeah, totally. No, there's so much great
Garbage
data here.
in, garbage out, right?
That's totally true. That's totally true. All right, Michael, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to go ahead and finish up this project for everybody else who so that the magic of video editing doesn't force this to be a 2-hour episode. Thank you so much for this idea. Thank you for posting it. I will link to the post in the show notes in the description so that people can see not just the original post and the prompts that I pasted in here, but also other people's ideas, because I think that's fascinating. This is really how we all learn, by taking one idea, putting it out there, and other people can add on to it or give it a twist or kind of find another way to use it. So that's great. It's great content and great ideas are right there. Uh, Everybody should check out Door 3 Talent. That's Michael's new venture, and he's literally new. He announced it today, in fact, officially. So go check it out. Go connect with Michael, and thanks so much for being here. And when we return, I will have the other part of this podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
Okay, so we're now on to part 2, what I do next. So I took the data, I pulled it down, and I realized it wasn't working, and I said, okay, I got to do this a little more seriously. So I took an hour, which is a lot of time in my life. It's probably a lot of time in your life. And I actually went into LinkedIn Recruiter. I typed in a certain query. I said, let's talk to just this audience. And it pulled down 90 names in my network. And I found the ones that were actually appropriate fits. And it was about 50 people. I built a little spreadsheet of their name and their title and their company and their industry and my connection to them and how high a priority they were. I didn't have any notes though. And I ran the process, and what I got was kind of thin. because I'm not the use case. I'm not the proper use case. And I realized that doing this. And it wasn't an hour wasted because doing that really made me look at what the other LinkedIn data was. And I really said, because and I mentioned this in part one, the value of AI isn't just that it makes stuff, is that it, once you get out of its own little bubble and start to throw in your own data you carry around all the time and have access to in so many different ways. Once you throw in your own data, suddenly it makes a lot more sense. It brings a lot more value because it's not talking about in the aggregate, people should do this. It's talking about you, my friend. It is talking about me. It is talking about whoever is running this process to really learn something. So what I ended up doing, the thing that kind of, I was throwing a bunch of things in it and it's trying to say, how do I make this work? What I came away with was this idea because yes, I have connections and yes, I have all this data. And Michael kind of head points to this idea that if you throw in your own posts, you can actually run through them and say, hey, how would you write these better? And there's a lot of different coaching opportunities here. But what I came up with was, if I threw in my messaging file, which was almost 2 megs of text messages, which if you know anything about how text messaging works, that's a lot of messages. And I mean, that's years and years and years of messaging on LinkedIn. And I do a lot of messaging on LinkedIn. And it was interesting because not only does it throw in the messaging, it throws in all this metadata, like when did you post? Did they respond? What did they respond with? And so once I went through Michael's process to say, okay, here are my connections, understand what I'm trying to do, and it started to learn a bit about me and what I'm looking for, then I threw the messaging file in it and said, okay, based on this new data, what insights can you reveal for me? And this is another thing. Don't assume you know all the answers. Ask the tool what it can do with that. It won't have all the answers, but together you'll play a game. You'll bounce it back and forth and you'll find something really, really interesting. And what I discovered was that if it knew all my contacts and it knew who I had messages with, and by the way, in the contacts file, it also shows when we were connected. So it can see if this contact is a week old or 10 years old. And yes, we've all been on LinkedIn that long. I started to say things like, hey, is there anybody I'm connected to and have been connected to for more than 3 years in a certain industry who I have not yet messaged? It's identifying opportunities for me to reach out to people who clearly are connected with me. They saw something in me that was interesting. They were willing to engage. They were willing to connect. I just didn't think to kind of engage with them in that moment. And let's be fair, we get a lot of, recruiters, employer branders, people who do this work. We get a lot of connections and we connect people a lot. We don't always have the time to immediately respond and talk to people. This was a way to identify leads. I could even say, hey, in the certain industry, in a certain job title, is there anybody who's a director of talent acquisition who's in my network, who's in this industry that I haven't talked to? And it came up with like 15 different names, which to me was like, that's gold. Oh my goodness. Now I knew who to reach out to. So I'm not going to go too deep. What I am going to do is point you to Michael, because Michael has since the recording posted more posts about what he's doing with LinkedIn. The message I want to leave you with, the lesson that I want you to leave you with is that get your own data. Leverage your own data. Tap the data you have about you, and you will be stunned the places you can get data. Honestly, if you can actually have Claude read your Gmail. You can have it say, hey, go read my Gmail and tell me, I've seen this done, it's crazy. Hey, based on all my Gmails, which is, by the way, sent and received, tell me something about me and my working style that I should probably know. And it can actually work up a pretty interesting profile on who you are based on how you interact with people. Right? It can. Think of it as building your own, user's manual for you professionally, especially if all your work emails on a Gmail account on a separate one relative to your personal one. There's so many data points and areas that you can leverage to identify stuff. So play around. Kick some tires, see what you can do. If you've got a challenge that you'd like me to play around with AI with, let me know. If you've got a solution, if you've got this cool trick that you're using Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or something with that you'd like, hey, I bet most people don't know this. They probably should. Find me. I would love to have you on the show. So thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for dealing with the weird kind of complications of me not being the exact right use case in this situation. And make sure to take the next step. Be sure that if you learn something, you gotta share the episode. You gotta share the newsletter. You gotta share the podcast, however you're absorbing this information. So more people in the recruiting and employer brand space can also take the next step along with you. So thanks so much for being here. I'm James Ellis, and I'll see you next time.